Don't even think about watching this video if you like spending 50, 60, or even 70 hours a week at work, because in today's video, I'm going to teach you how to cut your financial reporting time in half or more by using Power Query for your financial reports. Hi, I'm Mike, and over more than a decade, I've spent time working in finance from the Fortune 100 all the way to brand new startups. And over that time, I've seen finance workloads get larger and finance teams get smaller. So that's where automation becomes really critical. Earlier in my career, I would just be manually piecing things together, and I honestly didn't care how long month end took because I didn't have a whole lot of responsibilities at the time. But now, as I want to expand my career, as I have a family and other responsibilities, I don't have the time to sit around and piece this data together. And that's where a tool like Power Query is absolutely critical. So today, I want to teach you what I've learned about Power Query. And to be very honest, I've known about Power Query for 6 or 7 years, and I put off learning it until just recently because it sounded a lot more intimidating than it turned out to be. So I want to save you all that time. I'm going to teach you the basics and give you 80% of what you need to know for all of your work in Power Query in just the next 15 to 20 minutes. Before we do that, I would really appreciate if you'd take a second and hit that subscribe button and then ring the bell so that you don't miss any of our weekly finance videos. It would really mean a lot to me. I care a lot about giving you the best possible information. And of course, if you want to see anything new from the channel or if you have any questions, just feel free to pop a comment down below and I respond to every single one. All right, with that, let's get started. Let's talk about how to cut your financial reporting time in half using Power Query. What is Power Query? You may have heard about it, you may not have heard about it. Well, it's a tool that's built right into Excel. I'm going to show you that if you haven't used it before, it's been literally sitting right in front of you this entire time. You don't need to download anything, you don't need to put any add-ins on. It's there, ready to go. It does three main things. The first is data transformation, the second is performance enhancement, and the third is automation. So for data transformation, what does this mean? Well, it means you can clean, consolidate, and manage data, and you can even add calculations before they hit the workbooks. What this means is you don't need SQL, you don't need the dreaded nested if function. You can do all of this before it even gets in the workbook. For performance enhancement, it allows you to pull in more than 1 million lines where Excel is capped, and you can pivot straight from data models without ever pulling data into the file. This will make your files shrink down in size. My typical file is 10% smaller using Power Query than it was before. And even better, it's automation. It saves and repeats all of your steps, and you can go back and edit any step if you need a change. Plus, you can push changes through the entire model with just one click. I'm going to show you a really powerful way to do that with mapping tables that will hopefully blow your mind. So how do you use Power Query? Well, anytime you use Power Query, you're going to go through the same 3 steps. You're going to get data, you're going to transform the data, and then you're going to load the data into your workbook where you can then do whatever you need to it. Pivot charts, other charts, tables, graphs, whatever you need, you'll be able to do that. So again, we're going to get the data, we're going to pull in raw data, pull in mapping tables we need, and this can be anything. It can be Excel, it can be CSV. You can even scrape data out of PDFs and pull from the internet or even your company's servers if you can get your IT systems on board with that. This is incredibly powerful. Think about stock analysis. You can just go be scraping data out of companies' financial reports. For transforming data, you can clean up and consolidate multiple data sets, add calculations, mapping, conditional formatting, more, whatever you need to do. And then you can add your data to the data model where Excel will always just query out to the workbooks, or you can pull in a small set of it as an Excel table if you want to make sure that it's easy to send an email off to people. And then you can work with this data using Power Pivot or treat it just like any Excel table using all of the regular formulas and functions that you're used to. And again, all of this without coding, without SQL, without nested if functions. It's going to be a user interface that you're really familiar with. All right, so now let's get out of PowerPoint and let's start working with Power Query. So first I want to introduce you to our data sets. I've got 2 data sets here for you. The first one is a bunch of data from some coffee shops in Manhattan. Let's see how many lines we've got here. I wanted to make sure we got a really big one. All right, so we've got almost 150,000 lines of data, and it's just a lot of transaction data for a coffee shop. The thing is, that a lot of times data will come in from the point of sale system and it's not in a usable format the way that the management team likes to look at it. This is a perfect example. There's all these product types, product categories. What do we really need to care about? It's probably not all of these columns. The second thing, we've got a mapping table that I've set up. So on the first tab of the mapping table, we've got the different product types and how management wants to look at it. So it's a lot less, it's a smaller list, and it's really how they run the business and how different managers are responsible for the business. There's also time of day, so the data is pulling in from the point of sale system by hour, but we really treat our customers differently during each section of the day, morning, lunchtime, afternoon, evening, and customers have different behaviors, and we want to be able to track those behaviors. So those are the two mapping tables that we're going to use. Now let's open up a fresh and clean Excel file. All right, nothing like a fresh, clean Excel file. So here's the coolest part if you're not familiar with Power Query. If you go to the Data tab and you see this Get and Transform Data section, that's Power Query. It's been right here in front of you this entire time. Totally free, ready to go. I didn't do anything. This is a normal version of Office 365. It's just right there. Don't believe me? Pause the video and go check. I am sure you'll find it's there. This is the first step. Remember we talked about get data, transform data, load data. This is where we're going to go get our data. Now there's a lot of different options. So I can come down here. Most commonly, you'll probably be using pulling in from text CSV for large data sets from an Excel workbook. Again, you can do PDFs. You can connect directly to your company's databases if your policies will allow for that. A lot of companies don't. But regardless, you can download, you can also come down and get stuff from the web. Whatever you need to do, it's here. One note I do want to make is if you have data in your Excel workbook, like if I had a table here, you have to hit this From Table Range button. You're not going to find that in the dropdown. So let's go ahead and get our data. So I've got an Excel workbook, and we're going to go pull that in. All right. We're going to pull in our coffee shop sales. So now the first one's going to come up. So listed here, you'll see every tab in the workbook and tables. So if you define table names, those will be here, and then also all the tabs. In this case, I only have the data that I need on the transaction tab, so I'm just going to pull that right in. You've got two options down here. You can go to load or you can go to transform data. If I go to transform data, I'm going to open up the Power Query editor. If I load, I'm going to pull it in. I'm not going to go to the editor yet, and that's what we're going to do because I want to pull in another data set. So we're going to go load, and almost always it's safer to use load to, and I'm going to show you why. So for the most part, when you pull data in, you don't want to pull it into the worksheet because you want to keep the worksheet small and performing fast. We just want to create a connection. What this is going to do is it's going to create a mini data cube. You're going to build your own mini data cube, and Excel's only going to go query the data that you need, and it's going to make everything run a lot faster. So we'll hit OK. And then you'll see the query and connection window pop up, and this is a list of every data set that you've connected to. All right, now that that pulled in, we're going to go pull in our other one. All right, and we're going to open mapping table, and we're going to import this in the same way. The only difference here is we have two different tables we want to pull in, category and time of day. So we select multiple items, we check both, and then again, I highly recommend using load to just for safety. And we'll pull that into the data model. You'll see we now have 3 data sources because each tab is its own data source. So now we're going to go ahead and open Power Query. So to open the Power Query editor, we're going to go to Get Data, and we're going to hit right here to launch the Power Query editor. This is the Power Query editor, and there's a lot of functionality in here. I'd say I use probably 10 to 20% of it. You can experiment with features. You can even go in and start, doing really complicated things and coding your own transformations, but I'm going to show you the basics of what you need to know to get running, and this will be 80% of what you need to use for anything in finance. So first of all, down here is the window. This is where we're going to see the data we've selected. So I'll just pick the transaction data. So you'll see here's all the data. It's just a preview. Again, it's never pulling in the full data set to save space. And then all of my steps are listed here. We'll go through that more in a moment. So these are the steps of the transformation. And I can come over here and select any of my queries. On the Home tab, you have the basics, the most common. So starting from left to right, over here you can refresh the preview if it's changed. You can choose, add, remove columns, do the same with rows here. You can sort and filter the data set. You can go through split columns, you can group. The grouping is really powerful. Let's say you have these like 20 columns we want. It'll if you condense the columns, it'll start to aggregate the data at those levels, and you can significantly reduce the data set. Just as an example, let's say you've got quarters or months and you just want to have the years, right? If it's quarters, you can literally cut your data set down to a quarter of the size. If it's months to years, you can cut it down to a 1/12 of the size. Super cool. If your headers didn't pull in, you can flip the first row to be headers, you can change values, and just like using SQL, but a lot easier, you can merge queries. That's where you take something like a mapping table we're going to do and merge it in, or you can append queries. That's if you have two identical data sets, then you just kind of add them together. So merging goes this way, and then appending goes that way. And then all the way over to the right, you can pull in sources if you want to do that. If you need to pull in any additional data, you can do that here. Transform is going to just give you a lot more options of the basic transformation you saw on the first page. A couple of really powerful ones. We already talked about group. You have functions in here like transpose. You have replace values in here. You can pivot or unpivot columns. So let's say someone gave you a table and you have the months across the top, but you want those months to go into the rows so the whole data set is just one column of numbers. You can do that here. Super easy. Boy, did I spend a lot of time doing that earlier in my career. There's also a lot of different math functions, formatting functions. So we can come in here, let's say you wanted to divide by 1,000. Here's all your math here, all kinds of different things you can do, absolute value, powers, great stuff. And then columns, this is where you can add in calculations before you ever go into the file. So a couple of really powerful ones you can build from examples. You can build a custom column where you have to write out the code. Do note it is different than regular Excel formulas. There's a lot of resources on both my website and online for that. And then there's conditional columns. This allows you to write out true-false statements with as many true-false statements as you want. Goodbye nested if functions. And then again, just some stuff we saw before, some math, some different things that you could do. And view just is a lot of functions to share, how you want to see the editor built up. So let's get started with our first transformation. So we've got the data pulled in, right? So the first thing we want to do is we want to merge in our mapping tables. So I'm going to hit merge queries. Now my preference, I like to leave the individual data sets separate, and I create a new one, and that's the file that I'm going to import back into my file as the data set. I often have to email workbooks out, and it's just a lot more comfortable, faster, safer if I pull in the core data that I need so people can pivot right out of it. So we're going to go here and we're going to hit merge queries as new. If you wanted to do it in one, you just hit merge queries, but we're going to make a new one. Okay, so this is, you're going to select the columns that you want to align. So the first thing I want to do is category. And I've built my mapping table on product type. There's that. Now we're going to open the category mapping. You'll see here's product type. All right, and then it's going to pull this in. I'm not going to get into fuzzy matching in this video. That's if you don't have perfect matches. These are perfect matches because these are the basics. I will have an advanced course coming later. That'll be a lot of help for things like that. All right, now we're going to pull it in. So if you scroll over to the right, you'll see that it's been added here, but you have to expand it because if you have a lot of mapping columns, you have to tell Power Query what you want to pull in. In this case, I just want to pull in the mapping itself. Cool, so now we have our category. This didn't get a great name, so we're going to rename it. This is going to be category mapped. Well, if I could type, it'd be category mapped. All right, we're going to go category mapped. And you'll see when I expanded the category and I renamed it, it's saving all the steps. If I go back to source, you're going to see it's just the original pull in here. And then as I expand the category, rename the columns, you can go back and adjust all of your steps. All right, so now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull in our time of day. So let's go back here. We're going to merge our queries again. This time I can hit just merge queries because I have my new query. We're going to select our hour, which is how our mapping table is built. Here's our time of day. Hit OK, and then we're going to repeat that same step where we expand it. All right, and there's our time of day. So now we're going to group this data set down to kind of the core information that we need. All right, so we're going to go to group by. You will almost always be using advanced. I can't think of a time I've ever used basic. Advanced lets you pull in as many of these as you want to. We're going to start off with our new grouping. So we're going to have time of day. We're going to have the category mapped. We're going to pull in, we want the store location. And then we need to pull in our revenue as the value field. So this is going to be revenue. We're going to sum that, and we're going to sum revenue. All right, and now let's see what our new file looks like. There we go. So now we just have the time of day, the category, the store location, and the revenue, and this is the main analysis that we're going to do. So let's go ahead and pull that in. So we're going to go close and load 2, and this time we are going to add it to the worksheet. We don't need to add it to the data model because all the data is already in there. So we're just going to pull this in, and this is going to be the data set that we work with. So now our data set's been pulled in. You'll see it's a table. We can, of course, change that name if we want to have a little bit better file hygiene, but this is the table. Now, here's where we're going to go back and change the mapping. You've decided that add-ons can go right into other drinks. You don't want to track them separately. So how would we push that change through? Well, we're going to go to mapping table, and we're just going to get rid of the add-on category. So these are syrups, so we're going to say those go into other drinks. It's small, and the management just doesn't want to have to track that. So now we've gotten rid of the add-ins. We're going to come back here, and here's the really cool part. You don't even have to go back to Power Query. You can just go to Data, hit Refresh All, and it's automatically going to run that mapping change for you, and you're going to see add-ons wiped away, all mapped to a new category. And look at that, add-ons wiped away, completely mapped into new categories. Just to show you they're gone, now we just have coffee drinks, other drinks, food, and merchandise. Awesome. Then from this step, so you can go back, you can apply any new transformations, you can always just refresh the file. Let's say that you pull in a new data set every month. You can just pull in the data set every month. If you save it as the same thing, it'll just automatically pull in. If it changes, you want to go back and adjust the source and just move it over, but that's really it. You've automated this, but what do we do with this data? Well, this is where you can quickly pull in some power pivots. So now that we have this table, let's say that we want to put in a pivot chart. The great thing about these is that they'll automatically update when you update the data set. All right, so here's our time of day, here's our category, and here's our revenue. And then we're going to filter by store location. All right, and let's say instead of this way, we're going to flip this, we're going to do our categories by time of day. So with that data, straight out of the data model, we can see that our coffee drinks are biggest in the morning. That makes sense. So is food. I mean, really the entire business is largest in the morning, which makes sense, but you do see other drinks kind of come up in the afternoon. Food's pretty stable all day, but it's a little bit bigger at lunchtime than it is the rest of the day. So you can start to pull these trends out. And again, if you make any changes to the data model, it'll all flow through here. So just imagine how powerful this all is. Your mapping table's automated, your data transformation. I mean, let's go back and as an example, let's say I wanted to divide all this into thousands. Okay, we'll just do that real quick. So I'm going to go back to data. I'm going to go to get data. Say I just want to clean this up a little bit. We'll launch the editor. And it really is just so fast. So I want to come down here. We're going to divide by 1,000. Amazing, and there's your new column. So then I would go back. I'm going to close and load. We're going to refresh the pivot table, pull out those values, put in the new values, and there's all of our numbers divided by 1,000. So that's great. We've divided everything into 1,000. Now I want to show you one last thing, which is how to create a conditional column. So let's say that if it is at the Hell's Kitchen store and it's the afternoon, it's happy hour, okay? Let's say that that store specifically does a happy hour. Let's go back to data. We're going to launch our Power Query editor. And now we're going to come in and add a conditional column. So for this one, to do the if functions and then functions, you want to hit conditional column. It's a lot easier than writing out the formula. We're going to call this column happy hour. So we're going to say if store location does not equal Hell's Kitchen, then no. And if time of day does not equal afternoon, then no. Otherwise, yes, and this is going to tell us if it's happy hour or not. All right, so here's an example. So this is an afternoon purchase in Hell's Kitchen, and there it is. Yes, it's happy hour. We'll go back. We're going to close and load this, and we're going to watch our data set update. And look at that, updated automatically, and anytime you make any changes, it's just all pushed through the entire data set, and then it becomes available in your Power Pivots, in your charts, tables, whatever you want to do, ready for you to go in Excel. I hope this is as helpful to you as it's been to me. Power Query has absolutely transformed the way that I work with financial data. It lets me use more data, analyze it better, analyze it faster, and saves all my steps so I don't have to run them again. If you take away one thing from this video, I really hope it's that Power Query is not intimidating. Yes, there's a lot of buttons to click, but the basics are the things you already know how to do in Excel, and the user interface is so easy. If you have any questions or want to learn more about Power Query, just leave a comment below. Let me know. I read and respond to every single one. I am more than happy to help you out. Also, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss a single one of our videos. I post long-form videos every single Monday, and I post short-form videos every day of the week. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Until then, this is Mike signing off from F9 Finance. Cheers.